back for another episode here where I want to go into the military situation again on the ground. And from a high level, I'm here with Glenn Grant again, retired lieutenant colonel from the British Army, Dave Sims, who's a retired lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Army, and Yuri, who is also of the Ukrainian Army formerly and now leading territorial defense in Belgorod to the west of Kyiv. So I'm going to open this up now with all of you and just start with Glenn. And Glenn, you have a lot of contacts across the country from your time advising the Ukrainian Army. What's going on at a high level from your side, and we'll kick off this discussion.
Yeah. Okay. It's if you actually listen to the radio or television at the moment, then you don't see some of the things that are going on underneath, because they're tending to concentrate on the you could say the atrocity in down in Mariupol, where the attackers are just trying to literally flatten the whole of the city, and then the atrocities in and around Kiev. And it's interesting that the Russians have been pushing hard on both Kiev and Kharkiv at times, but there's but the actual fighting troops around the outside, the armored troops, have not been moving much at all. Most of the attacks on the two cities have been from rockets and including today aircraft dropping 2 dumb 500-pound bombs. Now, what's the backstory, as they say on that? Well, the backstory is, if you reach the stage where you're dropping dumb 500-pound bombs, it's telling you very clearly that we're running out of missiles, because those bombs, neither of those exploded, because they're old. So they are dragging absolute rubbish out of the stocks to actually to fight, and to risking aircraft, precious aircraft, to actually to drop 2 bombs that did not go off. So this is telling us that at this stage in the battle, Russia is hurting in more ways than one. So there's the big thing. They continue to press advance down in the south, but that is because it's a big area. I mean, when you're looking at something the size of France, then there's lots of space there. So it is entirely possible all the time for as you can see, for one of these arrows coming out of Crimea and going up and left, it's possible to do that, because there just are not enough at the moment, not enough Ukrainian brigades and soldiers to block every single road. Now, the brigade, there are 2 brigades down there in Odessa and Nikolaev. So I'm pretty sure that they will do something about this. But they've got to be careful, because the aim, obviously, of that arrow is to get right across to Transnistria and cut off Odessa and Nikolaev. At the moment, the way things are going, I don't think they're going to be able to do that without huge reinforcement. So that's where we are now. What we hear on the west, in the old enclave, the Donbass enclave, is that they're holding on quite well, and that there's no the attempt to sort of break through and create the larger Donbass, which is what they were talking about, which was one of the actual reasons given by Putin for starting the war, that is not going anywhere. In fact, if anything, now some of the Ukrainian troops are beginning to move forward in little areas and actually bite small pieces back of the Donbass. So we know that Russia is hurting, and they're hurting on supplies. They're hurting on every time they put armored columns forward, they are just getting smashed. They're hurting on the loss of their aircraft.
How
And
many
they've
were
lost?
lost yesterday? I think there were 9
Yeah,
aircraft between thing and helicopter shot down yesterday.
yeah, yes, and they've effectively they've lost a similar amount to what they lost in the whole 10-year conflict in Afghanistan in 10 days.
And let's also put this in context for the Battle of Britain versus the same effect of having in the Battle of Britain when the Germans would lose fighter pilots over Britain. What happens to those pilots? They're killed or captured. And what happens to Ukrainian pilots that also get shot down, which there's been not nearly as many as Russians that have been shot down, but they actually are probably going to get back into the fight unless they're killed in the actual aircraft in the air.
Yeah, one hopes so, because there's. I'm going to move on to one of the other backstories, which is this discussion about aircraft coming from other countries, and at the moment, the countries that have got MiG-29. I did a bit of research, and there's actually not just countries in Eastern Europe, but there are some in the Middle East and some in Africa as well. So they're not going to give up their aircraft unless someone like the United States actually backfills and provides the air protection for that country. So it looks likely that Poland will give up some of its MiG-29, which is no bad thing because they're old and it's time that they moved on anyway and spent the money on F-35. But okay, so if they do that, then that is going to completely change the air picture in Ukraine to the positive of Ukraine, because it means that they will be able to go and do attacks further away, like supporting Mariupol, and it means that it'll be considerably harder for the Soviet air to stay in the air without being chased by Ukrainian aircraft. Now, whether Poland is the only country, or whether other countries will provide support, like UK or the Netherlands or people who support air policing for the Baltics and allow more ex-Soviet aircraft to be used in Ukraine. This is all up for grabs in the coming week, I should say, because this is obviously a hot topic and a very, very serious topic, because air is probably the quickest and the most powerful weapon reinforcement that the other countries can give Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. So, Dave, what's your read right now? You've been looking at this, and one of the things we discussed before the show was the condition of Russian logistics. Whether there's pictures on TikTok or on social media of Russian flatbed rail cars, literally with civilian trucks now that are coming in to replace all the supply trucks from the Russian army that aren't working, have been destroyed. And there's a huge issue with the tires that the Russian army has been using. Literally, the maintenance of their supply trucks has been atrocious. How long do you think the Russian army can maintain it supplying its army in the field of fuel, ammunition, and other supplies that it needs just to stay mobile and prosecuting the fight?
Yeah, and I tried to look a little bit in the Russian log. Like you mentioned, they're rail dependent. Russian logistics is rail dependent, and Ukraine in brilliance cut off the rail lines between Russia and Ukraine. Right, so with the dependence on rail, right now Russia has to form a node and move logistics from rail to truck. Russia didn't have enough trucks at the beginning before this started to effectively sustain combat operations for really more than 2 weeks. Right? Figure you're going to have 72, 96 hours days supply on hand at the unit level. Right? That's pretty general, 3 to 4 days be able to supply yourself. right? Where you don't need a logistics push coming to you. So give them 14 days beyond that. All right. So I think about 18 days total. We're at D plus 11 right now. I think you got seven days. If they really conserve what they have, maybe 10 to 14. Just because there's an inability to move anything from those railheads inside of Russia or inside Belarus, because we know that they railed everything, right? Effectively, they railed everything into attack positions, and they still have to transfer it, and that's not counting what you also mentioned are all the losses of logistics assets that they've had inside of Ukraine now, because those are the easiest targets, and everyone knows what's on them, right? If you see a log convoy coming in, right, as a cavalryman, you're just like, ooh, oh yes, this is exactly what I want. And then I can worry about their combat formations, a little bit later. But if you see any enemy logistics coming through, what a rich target, and generally easy pickings, right? It's not well protected. It's probably not as well trained. It's probably not as well disciplined as an armor, mechanized infantry, airborne, VDV kind of unit, right? You wouldn't expect them to be more well trained, more disciplined, and more ready. Logistics, you don't anticipate that. So it's a rich target, and generally it's an easy target. So lots of losses. On my little slide, I got some of it. 60 fuel trucks, is what's reported. I think those numbers, that's from the Kyiv Independent, and other folks have commented that those numbers are a little inflated, but not really. They're not really exaggerated a lot. So people inside of NATO headquarters, U.S. Forward headquarters in Europe, these numbers aren't really that inflated. But that's 60 fuel trucks. You're looking at those are probably 2,500 or 5,000 gallon fuel trucks that are destroyed, and they don't have the ability to. Go ahead, Sam.
How many units worth of fuel trucks would that be? And that's probably that's a lot of their fuelers.
That's almost all of their fuelers. That's really committed. So they basically have a support brigade for each of their armies.
Okay.
And really you've templated like 4 armies, army headquarters for Russia in this fight. So effectively like 50% of the fuel capacity that they had committed here is probably destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as a tank artillery guy, like we are, that's significant. That's a significant emotional event when 50% of your fuel capacity is gone.
Mm. Normally they say sort of like when you get between even 15 and 30%, you're in trouble.
Absolutely.
Because you've got. Sorry, there's a thing, Samuel, which we talk about, which is that the logistic capacity for most countries is less than a day. Mm-hmm. In other words, you can only carry a day's worth of stuff for the next day, and therefore, if you wish to make a major attack, a brigade attack, then you need to actually to have 3 to 4 days of a logistic spin to build up enough at the front for an attack that's going to burn even more than a day. Right. And this is something that people don't understand. They just think it's nice and simple, but it's not. So Russia is at the stage at the moment where they are even less than 1 day's worth of fuel and food and ammunition at the front line, which is one of the reasons why they're sticking to long range fire and artillery, because they don't want to move, or they can't move in some cases. And I mean, Dave is hitting it on the head. I mean, down south they were actually trying to take fuel from the petrol stations, but
Yeah.
of course that that becomes not an option because you only need one battalion to go through a petrol station, and there isn't much left. I remember
there's
that
nothing left.
Yeah, there's nothing left. I remember that great line when I was on junior staff college, where one of the guys said, "So how many miles to a gallon does a tank do?" And one of the tankers said, "You fool, you fool." He said, "It's how many gallons to the mile."
Yeah.
He said, "Don't get any daft ideas that this is." It was something like 2.1 on Chieftain, 2.1 gallons to the mile, which means you really do burn fuel very, very quickly with a squadron of tanks. And what did you say? What was that, Dave? 3?
It's about 3 for Abrams.
It's about 3 for Abrams. Yeah. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, so that gives you an
and
idea.
When I say 50% capacity, that's capacity. That's not fuel on hand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we would go off of actual fuel on hand, based on what my capacity really should be according to my authorization table. Right. So if I'm below 60% fuel on hand in accordance with my authorization, I'm black, but I'm combat ineffective.
Yeah.
Right. So if they're 50% capacity of what they're authorized, and then what they actually have inside of that 50% is little to nothing. Right. So their ability to sustain combat operations, particularly and for any of the tanks that they have left there, is really, really poor. BMPs, BRDMs, BTRs, BMDs, those wheeled vehicles and the BMPs tracked. But those get a little bit better fuel economy, but not significantly better. So they really don't have those vehicles don't have the capability to really sustain combat operations much longer either.
Well, and the farther you go on these supply lines that you see, everyone sees these big maps, but really Russians are staying very close to the roads. And the longer these supply lines get, you either have to send your fuel trucks unprotected back and forth to your depot, or you need to send your tanks, which burn fuel, to go escort them back to the depot. And you're wasting fuel escorting them, but they may be more secure.
Yeah.
But even with the current firepower, you see all of these anti-tank weapons coming in, and the javelins, which are having an amazing, let's call it, proving ground right now for their effectiveness. It's really turning into a rout. I think there was an estimate a few days ago of between 25 to 30% of all the armored vehicles that have been committed into the country have been destroyed or disabled by the Ukrainian army. I think 25 to 30 battalion tactical groups worth of equipment, and that's probably gone up.
I saw a number that 300 javelins have been launched from command launch units. This is as of 2 days ago, so on the 4th. 300 javelin missiles launched. 280 hit their intended target.
Wow.
And javelin is ridiculously accurate. But it's in the hands of people who aren't all trained on how to operate the command launch unit, right?
Yeah.
And they're still having that degree of success. That's incredible.
Well, it's a battle changer in that respect.
We go through our training center rotations, all right? We're fighting against a world-class opposing force. They're fighting us with American equipment simulating Russian equipment, and a javelin is a big game changer against Abrams. It's significant against a T-72, which it seems to be the preponderance of the Russian armor that we've seen so far. There's some T-80s out there as well, because I've seen a few turrets blown off, and that's a pleasant sight.
So Yuri, I'm going to bring you in here because you are in Kyiv on the western edges, and for days, the news media has been focused on this column that's 40 miles long and never seems to move down towards the western side of the city where you are. What's the situation from both what you've seen and what you're hearing from the local army and the territorial defense on the ground? What's the latest from your side?
Sam, I don't want you to overestimate my role, because there is we have a huge empowerment by our civil force, I think, because territory defense is based on support of civilians, and I think that this is also the biggest changer of the situation, because we have a huge support for the army in civil society initiative, because every grandma, every grandfather, every children, every IT specialist, every journalist, every teacher, every truck driver are doing the best of them to put their part of their soul, part of their heart into the victory. And I think that this is incredible. I'm just I'm on the ground support level, and I communicate with hundreds and hundreds of different people of different professions, different backgrounds, of different regions, different territories, and I see that there is like a huge snowball of people's will, and I feel that every square meter of Ukrainian land is burning under the legs of aggressor. All type of activities is under civilian opposition, and every hryvnia, every piece of food, every piece of supply are provided, and in support we have a huge support coming from abroad, from our Ukrainians, and from also from other countries, not only Ukrainians who are abroad now, but from foreigners. It's just like a huge snowball that only growing and growing. That's what I see on the ground level, and everywhere. I just visited Kyiv yesterday, and it's like a huge barricade.
Yeah,
You could not recognize Kyiv now, because this is like a huge like a huge fortress. Every corner of the building, every part of the road is fortificated. It's like you could not believe that how city is transformed, and everyone is ready to stand, is ready to fight, and it's like a huge empowered, and that's it's growing. It's of course, psychologically, we feel some burning out in some level, but at the same time, we're feeling that this is the beginning, and we are ready to switch all what we have, and no one is talking about their houses, no one is talking about their property, no one is talking about their salaries or money they have. They're just ready to fight.
Yeah. It's amazing, Yuri, what you're doing. You've organized what, 500 people, and you're coordinating with the local army and police, and the police is fighting, as I understand, alongside the army, and territorial defense is like a reconnaissance for both, right?
It's I'm not allowed to say the exact figures, but it's growing, Sam. It's growing, and it's growing. We have queues at every station of the army. We are overloaded with volunteers, and at different level we have volunteers on medical care. We have a lot of volunteers on construction, on barricade construction. We have a lot of volunteers from business. They are supporting, they are supplying construction materials, they are supplying fuel. All stations, they are supplying fuel to what is necessary for defense. Every piece of mind, every piece of heart, everything is supplying to win the aggressor, and that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. So what have you seen in the last few days since you last came on the show? Any significant activity in your area specifically that your district has seen, or what have you heard from what's going on? I know there's a lot of news about Irpin and Hostomel and Bucha, but what's the latest in your area?
I tell to everyone, to everybody, to all my friends that I will stand here, and Russians will not surround and come through this line, this borderline. And I feel the breath of Kyiv, and I feel a lot of support from all parts of the world, and not only me. I think that we have thousands of borderlines on every city, every village, and I feel that my relatives, they are all in territory defense. They are on different levels. They are working, they are thinking, we are discussing how to make it better. And even, for example, today my friend called me and said, what do you think when we will make online training for territory defense, organizing territory defense around the Ukraine, to share experience, how to build it very fast, very efficient, how to build connections, how to build like humanitarian support, social, psychological support, how to build like how to collect all best minds and all best will of Ukrainians to fight on different dimensions. I mean, on information field, on financial field, on diplomatic field, and we are discussing like all society of Ukraine is thinking in different dimensions, in culture field, we build create songs, about this Russian ship, Иди нахуй. So we have a lot of songs, folk songs in this dimension, and I think that yes, and this is a huge effect, and I receive a lot of letters from Belarusian guys who sent readiness to support, not silently but actively. So I also have to say that yesterday we lost our friend and our member of AIM team, of my company team. He is Belarusian. His name is Ilya. He was fighting for Ukraine, and he was killed for the fights of near Hostomel region, near Hostomel airport. He was killed by Russians, and I think that his blood will wash some part of shame from Belarusian people in this war. And we have also very difficult moment personally for me, and for all like company, and also we understand that now this is the matter of like personal. This is personally very personal for me, and this Belarusian fighter, this guy, he is very young, and he has just married with Ukrainian girl, and they were very happy. This is a very bright young talent, IT developer, and I'm proud of him. I'm proud that I knew him, and his image will shine forever for me personally, for me, and for Ukraine.
So he was part of your company, Yuri, and I'm sorry if you're
Yes.
Yeah, sad. Sorry to hear that.
Well, Yuri, I think one of the things you're bringing up that people don't understand when they look at maps and hear about how large the Russian army is on paper, at least, and never mind how much of it's well supplied or working, is the spirit of the armies. And the Ukrainian spirit is not just the army; it's the entire population banding together, as you've noted. I think everyone who's there now is involved in some way, whether it's supplying, feeding, watching. The war effort is complete, and what you see, and we'll go over this a little bit later, is the Russian soldiers are just encountering walls of resistance that is completely inconsistent with what they were told, which is they're liberating Ukrainians from neo-Nazis who are supposedly holding the population hostage, and that's exactly the opposite of what they're seeing, which is creating a lot of confusion and outright, I think, demoralization among the Russian soldiers. And that's what they're running into when they see soldiers backed up by territorial defense like yourself. Glenn, what are you? I mean, people from different units all over the place, and what are you hearing in terms of the morale of the soldiers in the regular army and in different units that how are they holding up?
It's not a case of holding up. It's a case of almost like trying to keep them down, because everybody that I speak to is so fired up about what they're going to do. It's actually remarkable, and of course they're getting success. I mean, I wrote a piece, you may have seen it, about the need to actually to counterattack and get behind the enemy lines and start catching people in the at the back, the logistics, and searching for the artillery. And I would think within 15 minutes of me writing and posting that, I had my first reply of someone saying, Glenn, we're doing it already, and posting what they'd found. So I need to repost some of that to actually so people can see this. But this is remarkable, because we're not talking about special forces going behind the front lines. We're actually talking about volunteers. Volunteers and a volunteer unit led by a journalist. I hope I don't give away too much, but led by a journalist. So they've actually gone behind the front lines from a city in Kyiv, and they're doing the business.
Yeah.
And I mean, if one lot are going to do it, then more can do it. And it's what it's going to be. And what I'm seeing, I think, is an evolving doctrine where the you can call it the dirty spade work is done by the army, who hold the enemy and dig in and fight and do that, whilst the volunteers go and do all the rest of the things.
Yeah.
Now there's going to be a challenge now, and that is that actually now there are far more volunteers than there are weapons. That's one challenge. So the number of volunteers exceeds the number of rifles.
Although you just need to go to the farmers who are building up the world's largest weapons depot, and you can get weapons from the farmers soon, T-80s and all kinds of.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of those will go back, but I think a lot of those weapons are going back into the regular army.
Yeah.
And are being taken by Ukroboronprom back and renovated where they can. And it's interesting. I mean, that's a good point that you've just made, but it's interesting because the what is happening, and you can talk about this difference in morale between the Ukrainians and the Russians. That someone just sent me a video 10 minutes ago, and it's of one of the columns of trucks that have been destroyed, truck vehicles and weapons that have been destroyed. But when you actually look at it, probably 50% of them are not destroyed at all. They're left.
Abandoned.
They're just left. They're abandoned.
Yeah.
Which means that A, they can be used, reused. Yep. They can be taken away and reused. And secondly, it shows that the morale is so low that they're not even going to stand and fight. They're actually they're on their feet. Now, goodness knows where they're going. I presume they're disappearing back up the road or into the woods or something. But they've gone.
Yeah.
And that tells you an awful lot about these things. But I'm carrying on with this manpower thing, because this is actually quite important. Is that now we've gone past the reserve, the volunteers, and you've got too many, but now they've mobilized. So they've also effectively could have anything up to another 1 million soldiers in Ukraine. Now you're now coming into a big problem, because most of these are not military. So it means that going to frontline units will be a lot of Joe from the corner store. And this is going to be a problem, because it means now training, it means equipping, it means finding uniforms and everything for these people. And at the moment, my suspicion is, well, it's not suspicion, I know that the number of people available for doing everything exceeds the Ukrainian logistic ability. And this is one of the things where they're crying out to the Western countries to provide basically anything that can be used in the most fundamental way: body armor, helmets, uniforms, and this is going to make a difference to the Ukrainians, because if they can actually backfill some of the easier jobs, then they can start taking away people who are a bit more experienced to do deep attack and around the back of people and other things like that.
And
Interesting.
you're actually fighting for your own logistics, and I know that because you've been asking me if I know anyone, and of course I always know people, and anytime I know anyone who has something, there's these informal networks that are forming where how are you getting your supplies, and what are you seeing on the logistics side for getting the resources you need?
You know that I choose to fight on volunteer field more than on regular army field, because I think that the war of future is a more distributed network system as blockchain, as a blockchain system of war, because all heavy weapon will be on army, but what I think is more and more influential is network distributed multidimensional system of warfare. And I think that business logistics is much more efficient than military logistics.
You're not wrong there. You're not wrong there.
Time delivery.
Yeah.
Yes, we have, for example, only from my point of view, I have more than 10 requests from different logistics channel, and if one logistic channel is sucks, we have always alternatives. And you know, for example, we can finance, for example, helmets and body armors from different countries, from third countries. No one knows how we could get there, and it doesn't depend on even on Ukrainian resources. Yes, we can agree, for example, with the Korean companies about buying body armor and helmets from Netherlands. Yes, can you imagine that? And no one knows how we could do that. No one planned that, only because we have business connections and we know how to do that best. And no dollar is paid from Ukraine. So it's not about you know, about internal resources. It's all about a distributed network of influence, and about will, about ability of will of our people and the world's will. Because I repeat every time to the world that we are now the biggest producer of freedom. Ukraine is the biggest producer of freedom, and the world and Russia is the biggest producer of fear, of terror. And the choice belongs to the world. What products they would like to pay, freedom or horror?
Yeah, and what the world is doing is recognizing good and evil, and the world is siding with good.
Freedom or slavery?
Despite the financial burden on an individual or a business, they are siding with freedom, with right, and that's a wonderful thing.
And that's not a production for Ukraine. That's production for the whole world. And for example, I receive requests from volunteers around the world. Yuri, we want to come to fight for Ukraine because I hate slavery, because I don't want this for my children. And it's not about our borderlines. It's absolutely globally, and it's go through all borders and all front lines and all different continents. It's amazing. And I think that this is the dimension we have to implement to this war.
And it's people. I want
It's people.
Look at that. people. It's not governments. It's people. It's
Yes, and that's why I fight on volunteer on people's field.
Yeah. Well, you've done an amazing,
goodness of man.
you've done an amazing job leveraging your global network. So I will tell you, I can testify to that. And I've seen, just out of this show, we've done this 10 times now. This is episode 10. Just by putting this out, we've raised $47,000 on GoFundMe for refugees and to build what is now turning into a nonprofit. The Borderlands Foundation is going to become an enduring nonprofit to continue to supply people inside and outside the conflict zone with humanitarian relief. But also, I've been connected with people who want to help people like you, Yuri, and I'm able to put you in touch with them. And I won't go into too many details, but I think you've gotten a lot of support just because you've come here a few times and told your story, and people are inspired by that and want to help. And people are coming to me from all over the world who are so frustrated, wealthy people who, technologists and other people who are just frustrated that they feel powerless, and they're able to feel great by connecting with someone like you and providing you with life-saving equipment that literally could make a difference for the lives of the people that are under your command on a volunteer basis. So it's amazing to watch this informal, decentralized blockchain, whatever you want to call it, logistics network create itself, self-organize itself online, which I'm observing through all the people who reach out, and I'm able to just connect them with people who need it. And I don't think that's going on in Russia. I don't think they're going to solve their logistics problems in the same way. Maybe inside their country, there's probably inside of their country, there's some of that going on, but certainly not a global network. And I think the global support Ukraine's getting is going to swamp, in terms of logistics and manpower and volunteers, what Russia's able to put into the field. And this brings me, I'd like to get all of your feed. And I know, Yuri, you told me last time, how does this end? It's impossible to know. And I'm a historian, not a fortune teller, but there are significant signs that this initial push by Russia is reaching its exhaustion point logistically and maybe in fighting tempo. The big question becomes what happens then, and will they double down, which it seems like President Putin is logistically moving forces to have another sustained effort. Can the economy support it? And the same thing with Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine, spirits are really high. 80% of the country believes they're going to win the war, which is not the consensus of experts outside of Ukraine, but the Ukrainians believe, and that's the important part, because they're the ones who have to fight it, and that becomes their destiny if they make it so. But where do you see this going in the near future, Glenn? And what are kind of the possibilities?
I have several big worries about this. I mean, just looking at the videos today from Russia, where everybody not everybody, lots of people in Russia are starting to put the Z sign on their cars, where Putin has a huge support for what he's doing. People don't understand it, but he has huge support because of this. And my concern is not so much about Russia. Russia will keep going. Let's be quite clear. Russia will keep going. It can't stop. It's on a. It does not have the intelligence, internal intelligence to stop this at the moment. It's going to keep going. So the big question is not about Russia. The question is about Ukraine. And my worry is that Ukrainians may sacrifice for peace and take something a bit early, because unless they crush Russia now, unless the West, Ukraine crushes Russia now, Russia will come back again, because they'll be even more hurt and even more annoyed, in the same way that Germany was after World War One. They'll be even more damaged than they are at the moment. So there can be no proper long-term peace without a destruction of Russia. Now, we have to break it up. That is, I can't see anything else. I'm sorry, it's a nasty way of saying keep going. and it means that more people will die, and that this elusive peace, that Blinken wants and Biden wants, but it's a short term and it's a wrong peace. It's not. It won't be a real peace. If Russia is allowed to get away with this, we are in deep trouble long term. No question. Absolutely no question. Deep trouble long term. They will come back again. And they'll come back at Ukraine. They'll come back at everybody else, because the level of hate will have grown to the point where they are incapable, absolutely incapable of seeing anything other than trying to destroy everybody else. They're close to it now. They'll get worse. So they have to be beaten. Has to be unconditional surrender of Russia. Same as Japan, same as Germany. There must be nothing less. You heard it here first.
Wow. Yuri, what?
Yes. So I think that the strategic target of Russia is civil population. And I think that this is the only way they can, they can have a chance, because they are fighting with a 40 million army. It's not about airports. It's not about cities. It's not about, military bases. It's about civil population. And they are putting a lot of former Ukrainians from Donbass into their brigades. They put from Crimea, a lot of people from Crimea to their brigades, and they infiltrate the air and the space, the environment, living environment, with hateness. And that's the biggest challenge for the world, because what we have now, what we can see now, that's the goal. And I know that Russian soldiers, they were thrown, they were like put Belarusian mark system to show that on the war Belarusian soldiers are fighting, not Russians, and they are just masking their uniforms under Belarusian signs, and that's the way they are doing. And we have to understand that this is not about intelligence. That's the values, the grounding of their basic foundation of their thinking, and that's the Ruski Mir. That's the base of Ruski Mir.
Mm-hmm.
West doesn't understand this. Ukrainians know that exactly, because we live in this. We know insights of Russia. Westerners doesn't understand this, and it's not about intelligence. It's about values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Dave, what are your thoughts on where this can go short term? What are the options? There is some talk of the Israeli prime minister trying to mediate something. French president always seems to be trying to poke his nose in there. And who knows what the Americans are thinking right now. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the Americans are a huge question mark right now. Where are they? Right, American leadership in this is a big question mark. I think Marcone was making a genuine attempt, and he is the guy. He's the world leader who's maintained direct comms with Putin this entire time. And just a couple of days ago, he came out. He's like, "This is not going. This is going to go Putin's way. Not necessarily the outcome, but Putin's going to prosecute the war Putin wants to prosecute, and he's going to continue to fight that. I think I look at the big picture, and this kind of goes into what Yuri Glimbo said, is strategically Russia has to maintain a strategic dominant position, right? A global dominant position. That's where Putin's looking at this. And a lot of Russian people are as well. It's not just Ukraine, right? And Nora makes a great point there. It is global. It's about Russian influence and the Russian Empire, Ruski Mir. That's the Russian world, the Russian Empire. How do we recreate what was once great Russia? And people don't understand that. People don't understand history. They don't read it. They ignore it. I think short term, I find some things very interesting. Ukrainian banking is still functional. Critical infrastructure is
internet, banking, electricity,
right.
Society,
telecom networks
still working.
So many things are still functional that if I'm looking to prosecute a war, I don't want my enemy to have these capabilities, and Ukraine still has them. So what is, that makes me question where Russia's headed. Because nationwide networks seem to still be functional, right? Yuri's online right now with us, right? I'm in Northeast Ohio. You're in Poland. Glenn's in UK. Like we're talking right now, through a telecommunications network that is still alive and active in Ukraine.
Good.
Yeah,
That's mind-boggling at this point. I can go on YouTube and there are hundreds of live streams of webcams all over Ukraine. That's all functional. I can watch Russians walking around. Well, that's a great question right there. We kind of hit on this a few days ago, right, Sam?
well,
Russia always has a nuclear option.
Well, Dave, I think you bring something up. What the fascinating thing to me right now is that Russia still cannot dominate the air. So their ability to take society offline, communication networks, seems to be not there. Ability to take a lot of critical functions offline, either the will is not there, the know-how, or just they don't want to risk the planes and they don't have the missiles anymore, the precision missiles to target everything they need, which is probably
that's right. It's an extension of their logistics problem. And if you look at what Russia's done over the past 20 years, they've expended their precision guided munitions.
Yeah.
Especially in Syria.
Yeah.
Is where we saw massive volume of Russian PGMs expended. I don't think their industrial base has the capability or capacity to replenish.
Not with sanctions right now.
Especially with sanctions, but even leading up to 2 weeks ago, they didn't have the ability to replenish PGMs. So when you don't have precision guided munitions, your Gen 4 and your Gen 5 aircraft are no longer Gen 4 and Gen 5 aircraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just expensive targets for the Ukrainian air defense network, which is also functional still.
Which is completely, the network is functional. It's not just, a dude with a Stinger, man-portable air defense system. It is Ukraine still, day 11, has a integrated air defense system that is providing an air picture to their air defense network and to the Ukrainian Air Force.
Yeah.
And when Russia's not, they did it to themselves and negated the effectiveness of their 4th and 5th generation aircraft because they're on dumb bombs. So when I have dumb bombs, I have dumb missiles. My ability to
many of them are not going off either. A lot of them are hitting the ground and
just not going anywhere.
Right. Well, I've seen pictures of lot numbers from some of their munitions, and the lot numbers are from the early 80s and into the mid 70s, right? So these things are older than me, right? They're getting up to Glenn's age, some of their munitions, right?
No, they got a long way to go yet. Long way to go yet.
So they're not effective. So if I need to target a critical infrastructure node or a transmission line of a piece of critical infrastructure that can cripple a network, it's a lot harder to do with conventional old school munitions than a precision guided warhead. Does GLONASS still work? Their version of GPS. Are those satellites even functional? Right. There's a lot of things that you're called into question on what Russia's capabilities are. But we know.
Apparently, all you need to do is turn around the road signs or have the babushkas tell them the wrong directions, and they'll be going wherever you want them to. And their radios, as we discussed, they're having communications on civilian radio networks that are easily hacked.
Right.
So,
and ham radio operators in Ukraine and in the region around the world are listening in and real time reporting back, what's coming across those radios. All right. So it's a mobilization of an entire nation.
Wiki intelligence.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Dave,
Yuri, what are you hearing on the radio side? Can you hear the Russian forces talking on the radios, or do you guys have any tap into that? Or
he's not going to tell you.
We have our people everywhere. and yes, and you know that for when I was talking 1 year, 2 year, 5 years ago, and Russians were always asking, Yuri, who is paying to you? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Who is paying? How much did they pay to you? And how much did they pay to you on Maidan? And who ordered you to gather around, and who ordered you to
it's CIA, right?
CIA.
Yes, and to fight with Yanukovych, and who ordered you to organize all that civil movements. And frankly speaking, Russians don't understand even now what is going on, and why people are doing this. They don't understand, and that's the basic key for next scenario of the war. They don't understand, and Putin doesn't understand what is going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, just quickly, I want to get all of your commentary as I go through this. I promised Katya, our lovely show producer, that I would not skip the summary of all the tweets that are fit to show. So I'm going to do this, and I'd love to get any of you to jump in as I'm going here to just kind of wrap up with. I think it's really interesting to go through the Twitter, the highlights of it. And Marco Rubio here says, we're now entering the most dangerous phase of the Ukraine-Russian war. Russia can't financially or logistically sustain another 9 days, like the last 9 days. And that was about a day ago. And Putin can't survive being humiliated or being seen as backing down. And this brings up the nuclear threat. Yeah. That may be a way out, whether it's a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine or just escalation outside of Ukraine towards Western Europe or the United States. The Ukrainian prime minister here, briefing reporter, says the Russians simply can't keep bearing the devastating losses on the ground. He says he can't see how mothers of Russia can continue to bear the pain of the loss. And Russia's now even going to the point where it doesn't want its prisoners of war or killed back. And from now on, the Kremlin is prohibiting soldiers coming into Ukraine to take ID documents to the battlefield. So they're sending people with no names, no identity, no future. And the Russians are still fine with this. They're busy in queues buying furniture. And then this is some pretty haunting footage of reportedly a Russian cemetery preparing to receive killed in action from Russia's war.
Походу идет подготовка к массовому захоронению.
Wow.
Четвертая волна впереди.
Yes, this is a mass production of slavery. Yes, how it looks, how it is.
Yeah.
Visa, MasterCard, and now American Express, they've all suspended operations. All cards issued in Russia will no longer work outside the country, and any cards issued outside of Russia will no longer work within the Russian Federation. And the Kremlin says, don't worry, there's nothing to buy anyway.
Well, that's a great line.
Yeah, that's good.
And
That's good.
100,000 Ukrainian men have come back from abroad to join the Ukrainian army. In Kyiv, men are giving bribes to enlist in territorial defense forces. Yuri, I hope you're making some money because the waiting line is too long. No doubt we'll win this war. Just help us protect Ukrainian sky. Save hundreds.
I think Sam, another more profitable business could be metal scrap companies. Yes, I think
our friend Oris Yuri is gonna run Ukraine.
Yes, he was waiting for another venture. Yes, and it's fundraising. Yes.
Yeah. And then this is from a prominent analyst, Simtak, on Twitter. Russia's tempo of operations remains remarkably low. During this pause in Russia's offensive operations, Ukrainian forces managed some localized successes, though Russia's bombardments and its drive toward Odessa still continue. And this is a plane reportedly being shot down over Kryvyi. This is President Zelensky's hometown. And another aircraft being downed near Chernihiv. And
That's a great shot. Great shot.
And then this is a team of Russian soldiers, one of my favorite shots, using the elevator to reach an office building, and somehow they got locked in there from Ukrainian authorities. And I bet you that wasn't a fun exit. And local police are now getting involved in the defense, coordinating directly with the military. And the farmers are making a lot of money, the third largest army in the world. And this is the number of people who are trying to join the territorial defense units in Zaporozhye.
Возле цирка куча желающих получить оружие. Просто такой толпы давно не видел.
More trying to join the territorial defense there than the soldiers coming towards them.
And protests in Kherson, which is occupied, obviously. And again, another occupied city, the protests. And these are civilians hiding under a bridge in Irpin, which is to the northwest of Kyiv. And another
bombardment for 7 straight days, and are only just leaving their homes, and they're leaving them reluctantly, and they're leaving them with the knowledge that they might not be able to go back to them. And you can see many of these people are elderly. Можно вам помочь? Можно вам помочь? Вот там, вот там, вот там, вот там.
Ще трошки. Сюди.
Можна вам помочь?
Сіли, посиділи. Сидимо.
You see them, people are so exhausted, they can barely walk. They're having to climb this sort of twisted metal. Many of them, as you can see, are elderly. They're visibly distressed. It's just an awful scene. And these people are the lucky ones. Можно вам помочь? Можно вам помочь? Мне очень жарко. Это плохая. Можно вам помочь? Давайте мне вот это. Давайте мне. I'm just going to help her carry this bag a second. Excuse me, John, while we try to... Ну вот, ничего страшного. Как вас зовут? So people are obviously incredibly affected by this situation. They're frightened, they're exhausted, they're on edge, they've got their pets, they've grabbed whatever they can.
This is a rocket strike in BENEFICIARY.
Щойно стався ракетний удар. Влучили в приватний сектор. Зараз шукаємо людей. Будьте обережні, слухайте сигнал тривоги.
And this is a very tough video to see.
Погано влучили. Дітей 200-х вивозили, мирне населення, маленькі.
Shit.
Смотрите его!
All right.
So evacuation of a green corridor that we just saw. And Glenn, you said three things here. I'll let you comment on this. First of all, NATO, people to understand that it's not a collective monolithic body, but every country's doing what they can or think they can politically. Yeah. Secondly, the South you're concerned about. Kiev, Kharkiv, and Sumy are holding out amazingly well. And then finally, the workings of power inside Ukraine and the political forces being under threat from Russian agents inside the upper reaches of power, and SBU is working to cleanse itself, literally, of those agents. So this is from You Today and shared widely. And finally, just some really tragic scenes that I think everyone should just understand, that the human cost of children being killed as young as 18 months. Some really heartbreaking photos from that, and girl 6 years old. Another one, 8 years old, Paulina from Kiev, and just 38 children overall have been killed, at least, and that's probably, I'm surely not all that have actually. No. And I'll just end with this: the human spirit is strong in Ukraine. This is in Lviv, a sign of great heartbreaking evacuation moments between families being split, between women and children going west, and fathers and men dropping them off at the station. Well, Glenn, David, Yuri, just wanted to leave it with all of you for some final thoughts. Start with you, David, and we'll move our way around.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested over the next 48 hours on what success Russia could continue to have in the South. Can they actually connect that corridor? And a couple of outlying questions I have. The Russian Air Force continues to be a question, but I think we have a pretty good handle on why they're ineffective. Something we really have not seen a lot of, even in reporting, is Russian offensive cyber operations. So I'm going to take a look at that and see what's going on with Russian offensive cyber, because it doesn't seem like there's been a lot other than the run-of-the-mill standard Russian propaganda crap that we see. And then also looking at attacks on critical infrastructure. Airfields are one thing, but and we've seen that throughout the past 11 days. But I'm really talking about telecommunications, internet, power, water, those pieces of infrastructure that are still largely intact. And I think ultimately that has to do with Russia's long-term objectives. So that's some of it. A great win by a Ukrainian UFC fighter last night. And if you saw her speech after her fight, she won by submission. Marina Moroz won by submission. UFC won 272 last night. Great impassioned speech after her victory, and just had the place on its feet. So that was uplifting. That's something I saw, even though I'm not a UFC fan. And the last things I gotta say, Sam, I'm a Papist, so Saint Michael the Archangel, patron saint of Kyiv, and Saint Josephat, the patron of Ukraine, pray for us. Thank you.
My dad's church growing up was named Saint Michael's, so I didn't know he was the patron saint of Kyiv. That's awesome. You're in good hands. So, and that's the English version of the church, David, not the side Episcopal.
Yeah.
Catholic without the guilt. That was our church.
Hey, you live that way.
All right, Glenn. Hey, Glenn,
Yeah, well,
can you touch on the nuclear in your closing remarks? Because
I can do. I mean, I think the thing that sticks in my head the most is that the majority of the major governments around Russia still have not grasped the seriousness of this action. That they're still thinking that this is something that they can deal with at arm's length and not really get their hands dirty. And I just don't see that that's the case. I think that we can't afford to reward Putin for his war crimes, for his killings in other countries, and for everything else. And really, we can't afford to leave him there, because he will just come back worse as he gets older and worse. The nuclear bit, I mean, what is interesting, he is not the only one that can actually fire the nuclear. I mean, there's other people have got to be involved in this, right the way down to the people who actually do the firing. And one would hope that even if Putin decides that he wants to actually to do this, that common sense right across the board will prevail, because I don't think anybody else. Well, you can actually see that from the way the Russians are behaving and the way they run away, that most of them actually do not wish to die in a hurry. And I hope that's they're quite happy to kill Ukrainians, but they don't want to die. And I hope that this attitude and feeling reaches right into every part of the Russian senior organization, and that they'd rather enjoy their holidays in the Mediterranean than die early. So I'm hoping that this is it's a bluff and no more than a bluff.
I think that Yes, I'm afraid to disappoint you, Glenn, and I think that the next scenario of Mr. Huilo is to push the button without pushing the button. And I think the next scenario will be exploding Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant and make nuclear tragedy without pushing a nuclear bomb. This is the most, I think, dangerous and probable scenario that he is touching, and there is nothing that could stop him from trying to do this, but the whole world. And also, I have to convince you that there's no difference. Is it explode the nuclear power in France or in Texas or somewhere in California, somewhere else? It's they will be proud of doing this. Believe me. This is some that they push the Z at their cars. And this is the same way of thinking. You have to understand, until the world do not accept this, the war will be growing, and it will come to Europe, it will come to Asia, it will come to United States.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, Yuri, I think people are starting to understand in some circles. I think closer you are to Russia, Glenn, I think the Baltic states well understand, and finally people are understanding their perspective all along, and probably Poland. Don't think the rest of Europe truly gets it yet, although they're starting to see that President Putin is, as President Macron is finding out, is completely lost it and is not to be reasoned with right now. Glenn, do you see any kind of off ramp that could give Putin a way out, or you just think this is going to go for a while?
No, I think that there are several people who, in the Ukrainian system, there are many people who would happily who would happily claim peace, giving Putin an off ramp and leave him with control of half the south of the country. No, I mean, and I think that there are countries. I think Macron would be quite happy if Putin stopped the war, but owned another large chunk of the country. I don't see any words or actions from him that make me feel otherwise. So people like him will be looking for peace at a cost that Putin should not have. At a price that Putin shouldn't be allowed to have. This is maybe Germany's changing its tune, but Macron will give peace tomorrow, just so he can claim he got peace, even though that means even if that meant dividing Ukraine. I think Biden will be exactly the same. I don't see anything from those people that make me understand that they understand what we're dealing with.
Just look at what is going on in Russia, and when you see on protests on the streets of Russia, the amount of people which are going on protest is lower than amount of queues going to IKEA shop.
Yep, that's right.
And the only weapon of West in this situation have to be switching off SWIFT.
Yeah.
SWIFT system. That's the key to the peace and to the heart of Russia.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, listen, all of you, I just wanted to thank you for coming on, and Yuri, for you specifically, we should have a place to let people donate to your territorial defense. And I just also wanted to point anyone who would like to help the Ukrainian army. There's also information on that. And we also have a link to the GoFundMe campaign, or the funding campaign for the Borderlands Foundation, which we're setting up as a nonprofit right now. And we're going to continue supporting the war effort here in Ukraine through helping refugees and getting critical supplies, life-saving supplies into people inside the country. So I just wanted to thank all of you again for joining, and remind those of you who appreciate this information to donate and support Ukraine in some way, whether it's the Army or Yuri directly, or the foundation that we're building here. And thanks again, David, Glenn, and Yuri for joining us. And we'll definitely do this again when we need a full update on the state of the military situation in Ukraine.
Thank you all for inviting me, and let's fight for freedom for all the world.
We need to. Thank you very much,
Thank
Sam.
you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.